This episode of the Restoration Today podcast is brought to you by DocuSketch, the leading 360-degree documentation tool for restoration pros. And now introducing the all-new DocuSketch Field Camera Kit. Equip your team with everything they need to capture full 360-degree property walkthroughs in minutes. No missed rooms, no return visits, no excuses. Check out the new kit at DocuSketch.com. Again, that's DocuSketch.com. Hey restorers, welcome to a fresh episode of the Restoration Today podcast. I have a veteran of the industry with me, semi-retired maybe, also taking time out of a hunting trip to be on the podcast this morning, which I super appreciate. So I'm joined by David Olson, who maybe you've seen him on LinkedIn chatting about his career or other places. He has been in the industry almost 5 decades, not quite. He's a few years shy of 5 decades, but he has worked everywhere from like ATI to ServPro to Puro Clean to 1-800 water damage to independence, been a consultant, kind of everything in between. He's held different roles in the industry from COOs to general managers. So David really understands what the industry looks like and how much it has evolved over the last 45-ish years since he has been in the industry. I'm really excited to kind of pick his brain now about the changes that he has seen and from his experience, what he sees is maybe on the horizon for the industry, what people should pay attention to, getting some into the topic of, hey, the industry is really hard right now. How do you keep growing your profit in a healthy way? All of those things. So David, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here and being flexible. So
good morning.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Michelle. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. We've been trying to get together here for a little while and talk about the health of the industry. And when we first set this up, I forgot that I had a trip scheduled. So I'm a little bit here in the wilderness in Lewiston, Idaho, at the start of Hell's Gate Canyon. And there's a lot of wildlife. So don't be surprised if you don't hear some geese flying over me. So so I'm excited to be here. And thank you for that great introduction.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being here. And I hope I hear some geese, honestly. I'm all about the wildlife and nature, so that would be great. I'm going to toss it over to you because my intro was short and sweet, but I know we could spend, probably 10 hours going over your history in the industry, but give the listeners a quick glimpse of who you are and your journey in the industry.
Well, I'm second generation restorer, and we actually have 3 generations of Olsons in the restoration industry. So, and I have a feeling there will probably be a 4th. So Floyd and Sandra Olson started ServPro of Gig Harbor. And in 1979, Dad was working out of Gig Harbor, Washington, which is outside of Tacoma, which is really beautiful country, in the beef industry. And we spent many years in the beef industry. And after that, about 2.5 years here, High Grade Meats wanted Pops to go back to Dearborn, Michigan to head up High Grade Meats North America. And he had moved enough. We actually lived in Sao Paulo, Brazil, I think it was for about just under 9 years. So it was really cool down there. Here come a bunch of geese. So he kind of said no. And he hired a business broker. And the business broker said, you should look at ServPro. So he looked at ServPro. Mom and Dad put their money down. And it's kind of funny because Dad didn't even have a truck or a van at the time that he got his equipment package. So I went and helped pick it up in my 1972 Ford F-250. All fit in there. And I had been in the beef industry myself since I graduated. And I thought that equipment was cool. I thought the cleaning agents were cool. I thought the SOPs were cool. It's basically like baking a cake. You open up the cookbook and there's your recipe. And that's the beauty of franchising. A lot of franchises have the cake recipe. You just have to get yourself and the franchise owners to open that book and read it and follow the process. So about a year later, off and on, I was helping Dad with his business when he needed some muscle. I was young and strong then. And so I would go out and help him. And I realized that I really enjoyed cleaning carpets. I really enjoyed cleaning things. It just gave me a lot of satisfaction helping the customer achieve a clean house. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot more fun than working with processed meats. There's not a whole lot of reaction there, and the cooler is always cold. So about a little while after that, I said, Dad, the bottom has fallen out of the meat industry. It's gone non-union, and the wages are much more difficult. And I've got a child on the way. Do you mind if I came and worked for you? And being an old Norwegian like he is, he says, yeah, you can start on the bottom of the totem pole. And back then that was on the drywall and painting truck. And I actually self-taught, so I can do matching textures, all about the size of the opening of the gun, the pressure of the sprayer, and the amount of water in your texture. So if you know those three things, you can match a ton of texture. So he said, yeah, you can come over. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I found out that the guys on the mitigation truck were 100% commission. They also were 100% commission on carpet cleaning and sales. So there were three different levels of revenue there. You had 15% for your pay, 15% for your expenses because you leased the truck from the franchise owner. And then if it was slow and you went out and you did cold calling, you can make another 15%. So it was really a cool system because the more you worked, the harder you worked, and the less service calls you had back to reservice, the better money you made. So I did that for about 10 years. And I always laugh because I said, Dad, I got to learn all my mistakes while working for you. And he would chuckle, and he said, the one thing you have to remember, if you make a mistake, son, ask to fix it. Always ask if you can fix it. Apologize. Don't hide from it. Yep. Fix it. The worst thing you can do is give back profits to customers. That's not how you stay in business. And taking care of problems, standing behind your word. You and I talked earlier about if you do these three things in business, if you show up on time, answer your phones between 8 and 5 by a live person, and do what you promised to do, you'll grow at least 10%. Now, if you put in that fourth thing I learned, if you put in that fourth thing, it's called sales. When you don't have any work, get off your butt and go out and sell. And you'll grow. The sky can be the limit. It was funny. My dad used to tell the story to fellow Servpro operators. He would be going to like insurance agents, and he would call up Mom from the payphone back in the old days with the payphone. Hey, okay, Sandra, in about 5 minutes, I'm going to be sitting in State Farm's office in Gig Harbor. I want you to ring my pager like 4 times. So she would call his pager like 4 times, and Dad would say, oh boy, I'm busy. I've got to go and see what's going on. And so my dad was a very, very humble Minnesota Norwegian and such. And so now, like I said earlier, we have 3 generations of Olsons in the insurance restoration industry. And I wouldn't be surprised if my nephew, Eric Olson, out of Boulder, Colorado, doesn't have some of his kids go into it. And, maybe there'll be 4 generations in Servpro, and also possibly on the restoration side. So it has been a way of life for me. It has put all 3 of my kids through college, 2 with masters, and then one that spent some time in the nuclear metals division of the United States Navy, working out of Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. So anyway, so it's been a great life, the restoration industry for me. So that's a little bit of the history. Went in, got 2 Servpros. I qualified to purchase a master license or directorship, and then we also had 3 trainerships. And in 2010, due to a divorce, Debbie and I became better business partners than life partners. So when the kids grew up, we didn't have a whole lot in common. We sold back to Servpro Industries, the 3 trainerships and directorship. In 2005, I had sold the franchise to Carl Becher and Matthew Becher, and it's still going in Gig Harbor. So that franchise has been in service to our community since 1979. And I took 3 years off. I was tired, burned out, did a lot of hunting, a lot of fishing, went to Alaska twice for fishing, went to Alaska twice for goose hunting in Cold Bay, Alaska. It's called Navy SEAL hunting. It's just a lot of fun. And then one day I'm sitting in the duck blind and I'm thinking, really, I'm hunting again. And I coined a phrase: when you stop loving the things you love to do, you better go back to work. So searched the internet, found people I knew at Puro Systems, Puro Clean, they were looking for a VP of operations. I'm not going to go into the nuts and bolts of what was needed. Got down there for a couple of years, helped the company turn around with Steve White, Jack Boyd, Bob Villano. I have a ton of respect for all those men. And Steve actually taught me a lot about the corporate world that I didn't know about. I was a franchise guy. I was a pleaser, and I didn't always keep my mouth closed. And Steve liked that, and sometimes it didn't serve me too well either. But because I brought that real world knowledge to the corporate room, and then as we know, they were bought out, and now they hit the 500th franchise. Congratulations to Piro System, Piro Clean. That's a wonderful milestone. That makes them a major player in the nation. When you hit that 500, and you can say, hey, we're a service company. We're here to serve. I don't know if you all heard this, but about 6 months ago, Serpro had a radio commercial that says, we service 98% of all zip codes in North America. How do you compete against that when you're trying to do national programs? So you kind of touched a little bit about the ATI, the 1-800 water damage, a couple independents. I was with an independent last that actually sold out to High Ground. That was an experience I hadn't gone through before. So it's been a lot of fun. And now I am semi-retired. I still do consulting for service-based companies and companies that are community-based. And I'm using the old word community, where you truly stand with the churches and all the other stuff that stand for quality service. One day, my son, who's most of you know, passed away in May. He said to me, we're in the grocery store in Gig Harbor, and he said, Dad. I said, what? Do you know everybody in town? We're going down up and down the grocery aisles, and I talk to everybody, of course. And it says, yeah, I do, son, and I only hide from about 2.
We all have those too. We do.
Oh yeah, just
Yep.
go ahead. I could go all day just talking. Go ahead.
That's all right. And you have a journey to share, so that's quite all right. So what would you say is the biggest thing that you've seen change over the time that you've been in the industry? What's the biggest change that you've felt or seen?
Well, the biggest thing that hasn't changed, let's start with that, is dry is dry.
Yeah.
You know, somebody says, when's it going to be dry? I says, well, it's dry when it's dry. And our meters will tell us that. It used to be that our nose, when I first got into this, the only moisture meter we had was our nose. We would smell the odor. And the original moisture detectors were the palms of your hands and your knees as you crawled around on the carpet and felt that the carpet was wet. So, of course, technology has come a long, long ways. You know, we've got the equipment that still stands up and is firm and lasts a long time. And then we have the equipment that is basically disposable, that's used more in catastrophic events. So the basic dry is still there. Clean is still there. Wash, rinse, dry. You know, you can't like wax wash and dry the floor with the same solution. You have to sweep. You have to wash. You have to dry, and then you may have to polish. Cleaning is the same way. So what has changed is more than anything is how we go to market,
Mm-hmm.
what we promise to the market, who in some cases who we actually work for. You know, in the old days, it was the customer. We worked for the person that signed the authorization form. That was our customer. And it seems like more and more now we have to work for the person that actually issues the check, because they can dictate what they're going to pay and not pay. And then I think one of the other big things is about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, the introduction to the third party reviewer, the
Yeah.
person that comes in and doesn't know the customer, doesn't know the situation, doesn't know the inherent problems with the customer's state of mind. So we have an old saying, the home is no different than the customer. The customer is no different than the home. They're one and the same. If you mistreat the home, it's like mistreating the customer. So you have to go in and understand what their dominant need is. Everybody has a little bit of a different motive for why you're there. if they don't like you, if you don't come across clean, you're going to have problems from the beginning. So, um, in my last couple jobs is just having to explain to, I'm not going to use any names, have to explain to a third party reviewer, say, well, we don't pay this. Well, why don't you pay it? Well, it's not in the job description. It's not in the Xactimate code. It's not part of IICRC guidelines. I mean, I go back, my first IICRC class was the old drying symposium 1988 when Claude Blackburn, the founder of Dry's, taught that. I was a carpet repair technician now. So you've got these parameters that really don't do any good for the customer. They only do good for the person that writes the check. So you have to fight that battle. Yeah. So, and then the other change there is you have to document. And when you're in doubt, you document again. And all that whole package has to go with the file. And I coined this before I sold my ServPro. HMO has come to the home. The managed care has come to the home. So I've always said, when I have worked with new startups or companies that want to change in position to sell, I used to tell them, so look, HMO has come to the home. So your file is only as good as the information you put in. Your floor plan, your wet dry line. I mean, there's a lot of technicians out there that don't even diagram their wet dry line. There's technicians out there in companies that don't even talk about what is EMC. Like they'll say, oh, the house is still wet. Well, wet is different to every person. Some person steps in a puddle of water and that's wet. Some person steps in their bathtub and that's not wet. So again, you have to understand your customer, and then you have to prepare your file. You've heard many professionals out there that are in the teaching world that says document. So, and in some ways too, it's become all about profit and not customer. With the change in direction, it's, what's my EBITDA? What's the EBITDA? What's the profit? And there's so much focus on that because there's investments into these systems now, and they require minimum returns. And if you're somebody that comes in to turn a company around and you don't hit those returns that they expect, you're gone in 6-8 months. It's really challenging right now to be a COO, a CEO coming in to repair something. So that's a little bit of what I see.
Okay, so you've talked a lot about sales as well, and it sounds like kind of the heart of maybe what you enjoy in restoration is the sales and relationship aspect. You talked about drying, and sales are also sales. Techniques have changed, there's different technology and stuff. But what would you say is like what are the root best practices of a salesperson in restoration to really be successful at it, to really make a difference, to really get more profit and not just revenue, but somewhere in the middle? Top techniques, tips for salespeople. The industry's hard right now for some people, so
educate your customer. Find out what their needs are. Don't go in and tell them what you can do. Ask them what they need. A lot of times we go into an office, I've seen young salespeople go in and they don't even pay attention to what the customer likes. And every roof is a potential customer. So when people say, well, my area is different. No, well, you have 5,000 roofs here. They're just all commercial. So you better be in the commercial arena. So hopefully, your franchise territory or your business territory as an independent has a balance, residential, commercial, and industrial. So you have to look at, you have to go in. And there was a salesman I used to know, he's fairly seasoned. First thing he'd say, well, I know you got your A list. I would like to be on your B list. And I was thinking, I said, well, let's find out what their dominant motive is, what their dominant need is, and see if we can fulfill that. If it's in a small community, people know each other, so they're not quite as trusting. So you better find out who your competitors are and find out what their weaknesses are. You go in and market your strength to their weakness. You don't have to tell the customer what their weakness is. You talk about your strength. And I'm going to use this one day. I'm up the road from where I was in Gig Harbor in Bremerton, Washington. And there was a franchise system that was cleaning our clock in Bremerton, Washington. And so I'm up there doing a trainership visit with that local franchise. And about maybe 10:15, here come these vans, 4 or 5 vans by their office. And I looked at that and said, holy cow, 10:15. If an owner has never looked at how much time is wasted based off the time you get out of the warehouse, you're not making money. So you talked a little bit about profits and efficiency. Everybody needs to be at the job by 8:30 in the morning, no matter where their job is. Stay an extra 2 hours to do the overtime work to complete the job, so you don't have to spend 6 hours tomorrow or 4 hours tomorrow to do 2 hours worth of work because of your drive time. So I said, holy cow, guys, let's go. We hopped in the Serpro van. We went up into Bremerton, Port Orchard, and Gorson. And I said, guys, we're going to try this line because here's a weakness of a competitor that was cleaning our clock. I coined a phrase, if you have a leak, we're right up the street. And it worked because we were going to be there at a decent time. We could leave, that franchise could leave their office at 12 midnight and be to any job within 40 minutes. If that other company coming from Tacoma, they were 2 hours away.
Yeah.
So again, find out what your competitor's weakness is and market your strength against that. You don't need to tell people, you just tell people what you can do. And you also talk to them about, we're a member of this local town, like here in Lewiston, Idaho. The Independent is out of Moscow, Idaho. So there's no franchise system here. So independents in smaller communities have a better opportunity to get to work because they know people from high school, they know people from church, they know people from Rotary. When you go into a large city like Seattle, there's too many people, so you have to market different to those what we call centers of influence. When you market centers of influence, you want to be able to talk to somebody that can then talk to 200 people, but you got to make sure that your message is clear, so that message from one to the other, let's say 50 people, like maybe property managers, that message is clear and concise to the property development, the property company, then that message gets to the property managers. And again, I'm a huge believer in route sales. Still, belly to belly. That's the best marketing there is belly to belly. You walk into an insurance agent's office and you look around, and first thing you do is look around and see what they like. Somebody has horses on the wall, pictures. Somebody has golf pictures on the wall. You talk about golfing. You talk about horses. You try to get anything, you try to talk about anything you can to lower the tension, gain the trust, and then speak to what find out what their needs are. Keep your ears open, find out what their needs are, and then you come back and you start talking about what you do. First sales call to anybody should always be an introduction and an awareness of who they are before you even start talking about sales. And obviously building organizations, commercial property managers, residential, those are all different opportunities to gain work. Just like if you go into, let's say, a Best Western, and you walk in there and you say to the person behind the counter, who's basically an order taker for rooms, right? You go in, they take your order, you get your room, you go lay down. So if a salesman has never been guided or talked to about how do I make cold calls on a hotel motel. So if you go in and you say, oh, there's a couple deer right over here next to me. Sorry, I got distracted.
That's okay.
If you go in and you say, hey, I'm Dave with XYZ Restoration, and do you guys have water damages? First thing they do is the deer in the headlights, and they say, no, well, or is the manager in? Or no, well, the manager, go ahead.
Go ahead. You're good. Sorry, I had to move my notes. Keep going.
So if you go in and you talk to the the lady or the man behind the desk and you say, hey, if you have water damage, what do? Well, they don't know. So you go in and you create a sense of urgency. You go in and say, hi, my name's Dave Olson. I'm with XYZ Restoration Company. If you guys had a fire or water damage right now, who would handle that within this building? And you get excited. You know, you use your hands and well, that would be Susie. Well, is Susie here today? No, Susie's in Michigan. Okay, well, by chance, do you have her phone number so I can call her? If you create excitement and you get that, you can actually get that information. So it's also understanding how to get the information from the customer. Every situation's a little bit different. I wonder how many technicians or how many salespeople, especially if they're like estimators, salespeople, or they got to go close the job. How many of them know immediately when the customer comes to the front door after you ring the doorbell, you always step back 2 feet. You break down that zone area. You always step back and they see that and they feel comfortable. Yep. So if you go into a business right now to buy some shoes, you go up to the counter or you go up somewhere, you're in that business environment. You stand in a counter, you stand somewhere, you wait. But when you go into somebody's home, you're in their environment. So you better respect it and understand how that whole interaction works. You got to gain trust immediately. So sales, um, and here's the other thing, Michelle. Everybody in your company is a salesperson. Everybody. Yes. Yep. So what you teach your salespeople based off the time of year, like going into back in the old days when you had furnace puffbacks, the housing cracks, guess what you were training your salespeople on? How to market furnace puffbacks. Guess what you were training your technicians on? How to clean puffbacks. What did you talk about in your community marketing? Puffbacks. So if it's water damage season, you train your salespeople in water damage. You train your technicians and your office staff. So training should be consistent through your whole company, and you should never have a policy or something that can't be explained. I learned that from my dad. He says, my dad used to. This was like a teaching moment when he'd say, "Son, okay, Dad's going to teach me something." You say, never have something you can't explain in your company. Well, what does that mean? So if you have a rule, explain why you have a rule. Just don't say because. So I was blessed, to work for my parents. And then my brother bought his Serpro in Boulder, and now Eric runs that. And my sister was married to Doug Firmuth. He owns, and his son, Kevin, runs Serpro of Puyallup and multiple other ones. And then also I've got my friends and stuff in the independent world and the franchise world. So it's been a lot of fun. So go ahead. I could talk on that one topic for days.
That's all right. So my other question for you was, we talked about the biggest changes in the industry, but I'm curious if there's an innovation that came into the industry that you just think that innovation was the game changer. Maybe it was moisture meters, maybe it was some kind of equipment, maybe it was Dash and getting rid of paper, maybe it was 360 cameras. I don't know. I'm curious your favorite innovation that's come out since you've been in the industry.
Well, I think more than anything, the validation of dry. Now we have the tools. Originally, like I mentioned, we could smell the moisture in the house. And believe it or not, the basic rule back then in the early 80s, it was three air movers to one dehumidifier. It's still kind of the same flow. It's still kind of the same amount. But now your meters will tell you whether you're using a penetrator, a non-penetrator, whether you're using infrared cameras, and then validating the wet so you don't get false positives with your meters. Also, there are so many advantages too of psychrometrics, the recording of psychrometrics. Yep. That documentation proves that it's dry. proves why it took 4 days instead of 3 days, or 7 days instead of 3 days. As we know, if we put too much humidity in the air because of too many air movers and we don't have the right dehumidifiers, we're going to get secondary damage. So those monitors, Dash and the other ones, yes, there's a lot of good ones, but there's not one great one that I'm aware of. There's none that will do like equipment maintenance, calculations, job tracking. So I have to guide this a little bit because I haven't worked with all of them, but I've never really seen one that does everything 100% well. But again, I have worked with all of them, so I got to be a little careful. So here's a for instance, Michelle. If you go in and you dry a floor, but you still have what I call ball wetting or cluster wetting, or
Okay.
you know what bound water is, right?
Yep.
Bound water is water that is in the center of the board. Now, if you use your refrigerant dehumidifiers, but you still have elevated moisture levels in that core of that wood, you have an unbelievable opportunity now to put containment up and put desiccant dehumidification in there. A lot of restorers don't do that. They'll just let that bound water stay in that framing. And here's a for instance: an ice maker that drips and drips and drips, a toilet that drips and drips and drips and wets your structural framing. Once you pull all the moisture out that you can with your refrigerant, and you still have ball wetting or cluster wetting, put your desiccants in there. Dry it. Your psychrometric chart, your readings will prove why you need to do it, and that can't be argued. They'll argue it, but there are many people out there that are doing a better job of teaching us how to argue why we need to be paid. So technology has come a long ways. So yes, monitoring, Dash, all those other ones. There's so many I couldn't even begin to. Well, of course, we use Dash at Puro Systems, Puro Clean, and then there's just a ton of them. They're all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, there is. I just use that as, I think for some reason in my head, that's the first example. When I joined the industry a decade ago, their big marketing thing was the paper monster and getting rid of paper,
Yeah.
all of that. And so I think that that's what sticks in my head. I'd love to hear your favorite story before we wrap it up. So you have probably many, 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 but a favorite story from your time in the industry. It could be a loss that you were on or a training or
Oh,
anything. Favorite story.
okay. There's actually two.
Okay.
So one of these is on Willachet Bay in Gig Harbor. And this guy was so proud. He built his own house, a beautiful house, and he built his own wood stove. And he forgot to do little things like put screens where the air would flow over the wood stove from the outside of the house. So so he's got these two big Saint Bernards, and he had dog food in 55-gallon drums, garbage can. He never had lids on them, and the chipmunks were going into the trash cans, taking the food and storing it behind the wood stove that he had built himself. And all of a sudden, come September, there's probably 100 pounds of dog food back there. He lights off his wood stove. Well, the wood stove gets really hot and lights this dog food on fire.
Mhm.
All that smoke just came into the house and absolutely stunk up the house.
Oh.
Horrible, absolutely horrible. So that was a fun one, the way he told the story. And then another one was a molten ball of wax coming out of the fireplace. Somebody had got a whole bunch of candles from somewhere. I don't remember where it was. And they thought they could burn the wax and it would go up out the chimney.
Come on.
So they threw all these candles in the fireplace, and all of a sudden, this molten ball of wax came out of the fireplace and started consuming the carpet and put the carpet on fire. So that was an interesting one. I mean, there's so many. I remember the worst job I ever did. We were getting ready to go elk hunting, and we had a little bit too much Crown Royal and we were practicing our elk calls. And I wasn't feeling too good on a Tuesday morning. And I went to the worst sewer damage in my whole life. 3 houses in Bremerton, Washington. The basement's just full of sewer. I was never so sick in my life. Oh my God, miserable. So I learned that you don't do that.
It's a terrible way to spend a day hungover.
Oh, it was miserable.
Oh.
So, I mean, there's been so many great stories of joy. Franchise owners getting in there and growing their business, putting their kids through college. Like Steve White used to say, the American dream was owning a house. Steve would say to a lot of the new franchises coming into Puro Systems, Puro Clean, for a long time, the American dream was to own your own house.
Yep.
Steve would always tell them, now the American dream is to own your own business. And I always heard Steve say that, and I thought that was a great line.
Yeah.
So,
I agree. I think it is. So
yeah. So now if, now there's an opportunity. If there's anybody out there that would want some help with stuff, I have time, but, it's just been a marvelous 45 years, a life I never expected I would ever have, from helping people restore their homes.
well, I love it. And it's a great testament to, I love that you mentioned at the beginning that the industry has helped you, put kids through college and advanced degrees and all of that. I think it's so important that people realize that restoration can be a career, a lifelong, a very rewarding career, very purpose driven. So yeah, a lot of great reasons to be in the industry. Anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
No, it's a profession, as you said, and it should be taken serious. You're dealing with people's heart and souls. So you're dealing with their biggest investment in life.
Yep.
And so many people now, Michelle, expect to have problems when they have something done. So if you provide a problem-free service, you're the hero. Just remain the hero. Be that
Yep.
hero. And here's the other thing: have fun, enjoy it.
Yep.
You know, make people feel good about getting their house cleaned up.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's my story.
I love it. That's absolutely right. All right. Well, David, thank you so much. Good luck on your hunt. I appreciate you joining me. Thank you for all of your wisdom and your time in the industry. And hopefully, we'll catch up again soon.
Okay. Take care, Michelle. Thank you.
For more Restoration Today and the latest news, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, and find the latest episodes of the Restoration Today podcast on your favorite podcasting platform.